All right, here we are for number 3 in our series on this book, Becoming a Contagious Christian, by Bill Hybels and Mark Middleburg. I hope you've seen the other 2. If not, go back and see them. We have the first one on why become a contagious Christian. Second was the rewards, how you do a cost-benefit analysis to see if it's worth it to get involved in outreach and witnessing for God. So number 3 today is the chapter on a formula for impacting your world. And we're just trying to remember, what lost people mean to God and should mean to us. I was doing a funeral in Chicago, went to the cemetery, came back to the church, just came into the office. When I came down to the secretary's office, she had already deleted that person's name out of the computer database of our church. You've only been on the ground for 5 minutes, Could you just wait a day or two, People matter. That person was a life and a human person, and just in a moment we bleep them out of the computer as if they didn't matter. They matter. People matter. Lost people matter to God. And if anyone dies without Christ, it is heartbreaking to God and should be heartbreaking to us. And so we want to figure out, how can we impact the world? Well, Hybels and Middleburg came up with a formula. I can't put it onto the screen here, so I just have to spell it out for you. HP plus CP plus CC equals MI. All right, what does that mean? MI, I'll start with that, is maximum impact. You have one life to live. You want to live it for maximum impact. How can you live your life to live with the most highest possible spiritual influence possible? Where you can make the biggest difference. I think about teachers in a school. You teach 20, 25 kids every day, 5-6 hours every day for a year, for 40 years. And then those people go out to become doctors, nurses, business people. You want to make an impact. How can you make? Well, all of us want to make the most impact possible. And so we're going to talk about that. Matthew 28 says, go out, make disciples, go all over the world. Acts 1:8, start with Jerusalem, yes, but go to Judea, to the ends of the world. How can we make an impact to change the world? I told my church yesterday, maybe some of you heard it, that I have a friend and I, Ralph Watts, he's the president over in Hawaii conference. And whenever we email and talk to each other, we say, we're going to storm the world. We did Thailand mission trip together for 2 weeks, and we're hoping we can go again someday, somewhere, and storm the world. He emailed me and texted me this week, wants me to come and speak in Oahu and Honolulu for his camp meeting in September. And he said, Dan, come over and help me storm the world. You only have one life. You don't want to waste it. Get as much education as you can. Get full of God, full of the Holy Spirit, and begin to be a contagious Christian. Well, let's look at salt. Salt is where we get the high potency. Why does the Bible say you are the salt of the world, salt of the earth? Number 1, salt makes you thirsty. Do you make people around you thirsty for God? There are just some people that are so alive and so incredible and so good. They're just good. That makes you hungry for what they have. Do you make people hungry for God? Thirsty for God. Number 2, salt spices things up. When food is a little bland, you put a little salt on it. It just adds a little zip to it, a little excitement. Do you spice things up? Anytime there's a group that you're around, do you add life to that group and excitement to the group? When you walk into the room, people just light up a little because you're there now. Do you spice things up? And number 3, salt preserves. People use salt to preserve things. And that's what Christians are supposed to do. We preserve. We make things better in the world. We keep evil back. We are part of the moral force in the world. And we keep evil and Satan and the destructive forces back. Because we are standing for goodness and morality. We take stands for good. And we live goodness and righteousness. And so, high potency, HP, starts with that. We make people thirsty. We spice things up and we preserve goodness in the world. Obviously, that comes out of spiritual disciplines. We're not going to do that by ourselves. It's going to have to come because every day we're into the Word. We're filling our soul up with God so that we can truly be the salt of the earth. But what about CP? Is close proximity. It doesn't do any good to have high potency if you're not close proximity. The salt in the salt shaker doesn't do any good unless it gets spilled out and put in the food. Doesn't do any good still in the salt shaker. Becky Pippert wrote a famous book called Out of the Salt Shaker. If the salt is still inside the salt shaker, all you have, she said, is a table ornament. The salt's not accomplishing anything. It has to have proximity. And so you have to be close to the people that Jesus died for if you want to have maximum impact. Can't just be far away. And so I want to encourage you to think about how to get close to people. Proximity. High potency, close proximity. And then we have the light. Jesus said, you are the light of the world. Matthew 5:14. And then in 2 Corinthians 4 verse 6 it says, God has given us this light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. He's given it to us. We have this treasure in jars of clay, earthen vessels. Yes. We are the light of the world. Have you been in a place that was just dark and all of a sudden there was light? I can remember going backpacking. I told my church about this, where I got upside down in this mummy bag. I never had a mummy bag before, and I closed it up tight, and during the night I got upside down. I was down at the bottom. It was all dark. I could not see my way out, and I thrashed around, got hotter and hotter, and finally I just broke through, and I saw the stars and saw the night sky. Light. I can remember being in Africa in a game park, and all of a sudden at night, we had a big light, and the light went out, and the truck stopped. And I thought, good night. What snakes are out here, lions, who knows what's out here? We wanted that light to come back on. And so the CC stands for clear communication. It isn't enough to have high potency, be godly and righteous, and to have proximity if you can't tell people clearly about God. There's a famous illustration of people who were in the polio ward. One family came and got their person, took them out, and he got well. They got a cure. And he went back to the polio ward, and he did push-ups and jumping jacks and showed that he was well. Proximity. But he didn't tell them where he got well. There was no clear communication. And so we have to have all of this together. G.K. Chesterton, someone asked him one time, if you were stranded on a desert island, what would be the one book you would want to have? They were sure it would be, Shakespeare or the Bible. And he said, I would want the Thomas Guide to Shipbuilding. The one book you would want is How to Get Off the Island, How to Build a Boat so you can go home. And that's what we have to be able to give to people. High potency, clear, close proximity, and then we have to be able to say, here's how. Here's how. And that's how you'll have maximum impact. I went to visit someone the other day. 40 years has never come to church. 40 years left the church behind. And now is dying of cancer. And he thought, if he was going to die if he was going to be saved before he would die, he would have to go back to church and go back to the church that he left it just the way it was 40 years ago. But he didn't want to do that. Too many rules, too many laws. And I said, forget about that. One verse. If you have the Son, you have life. Clear communication. That's all I just said. I said to his wife, just get that into his head. And just say to him, honey, you and I don't want to die without knowing that we are okay with Christ. Forget about the 40 years that are gone. That's over. Forget about the baggage you have about the church. That's gone. Have Christ. Clear communication. High potency. Close proximity. Clear communication. You need Christ. And you will make maximum impact as a contagious Christian. Go out and do it for the glory of God.